Hello and welcome everybody to the UBE Academy Friday afternoon chill out episode 34. Oh my God, where have all these days gone? So today we are broadcasting from Germany. I am based in Berlin. As you can see in the background, this is actually how it looks like in Berlin at the moment. The weather forecast is reporting a bone-chilling -8 degrees for the weekend, down to -18 degrees Celsius, that is. So we're in for really some rough times. So now we have it warm and cozy instead. And let me introduce my guest today. Today I have Torsten with me, Torsten Hastal. Interesting topic we're going to cover today. We're talking about ethics and business ethics. And some of you may remember I have a bit of a past when it comes to business ethics, having worked in a company that helped companies to shape up and go transparent. And today this is fantastic for me because this is really a topic I'm very much interested in. Torsten, welcome. Who are you? Why are you here? Tell us.
Welcome. Thank you, Oliver, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm actually talking here in Nuremberg, so also from Germany. And as I was saying, I'm looking forward to our conversation, in particular to the clubhouse later on.
Okay, so today we talk about, and your current job has very little to do with ethics, or a lot. Tell us about what are you doing currently? What's your job?
Yeah, I would like to position the conversation always. I appear here, so to say, with two hats. At one hand, I'm working in Adidas in the brand strategy team for sustainability, and I truly believe that sustainability and ethics has a lot in common and a lot to do with each other. But I'm also a student in behavioral ethics, economy, and psychology because I'm really passionate and excited, so to say, at the midpoint of my career still to learn something and more about the topic.
Okay, so now we have somebody who is working for Adidas, who's an expert on brand, but then suddenly at the young age of you decide to go back to university. Tell us about this. This sounds fascinating.
Yeah, indeed. And if I rewind this, I'm 20 years in this industry, and the industry had many, let's say, S-curve developments. But for me personally, a really remarkable experience where I was actually sent from Adidas to Brazil in 2012. And maybe some of you remember Brazil was one of those BRIC countries, of those big emerging new boom economies. And looking retrospectively back when I left Brazil in 2017 and looking today what we see in the press about Brazil, government failure, environmental catastrophes, social discrepancies bigger than ever before, that was certainly a pivotal point for me, kind of, okay, I need to step out and relearn business, economy, and essentially also the aspects of ethics as part of business.
That's interesting because I was in Brazil a few times in 13 and 14, complete layman, absolute ignorant, difficult for me to understand this wonderful country. And then when I was meeting with people from Brazil in Sao Paulo, they were telling me, oh yes, the boom is over. While we were still in Germany or in Europe believing, oh, this is BRIC, this is the next big thing. And they were really downbeat. And actually, all their forecasts then, in fact, materialized pretty much after the soccer championship and the Olympic Games. That was a pivotal moment for me where I decided, okay, maybe some of the stories need to be reviewed, and maybe we have to think about Brazil and other places in a different way. Was there such a thing in your way? Was there a pivotal moment where you decided, okay, selling shoes is one thing? Working for one of the greatest brands on the planet, Adidas, is another thing, but I want more.
Yeah, I mean, I think I have two answers actually, and I think one thing you're really touching. I think your Brazil experience is similar to mine. I think there is also the emotional part or the psychological part. You know, you get super emotional, and especially in Brazil, it's easy to get super emotional about things and just get excited about the glamour, the beauty. And similar for my career also at Adidas, we at the moment we run our whole sustainability strategy under the umbrella message and narrative of end plastic waste. And obviously, with all our power, creativeness, innovation power, we try to solve the problem. But going back to your question, it's also a moment for us as an industry, as a brand, to assume responsibility, because we are also one of the biggest creators of that plastic problem, because our industry essentially turned into a plastic industry in the last 40 years. And when I started, I didn't know that I'm part of that problem creation when it comes to plastic, for example. So that as ethical question is relatively new for me in my career.
Okay, but that's interesting. But if we think about it, sustainability, is such is a word that we hear quite often. Everybody seems to have a different connotation, different meaning, puts a different meaning to it. We think about ethics and sustainability. How important is this purpose of a business, really? I mean, at the end of the day, we all want to make money. Why do we need this?
I mean, in my perspective, and you see, coming from Adidas, I obviously come from a very brand-driven space, and I think it makes a huge difference. Let's say if you're in a business-to-consumer environment, or if you're in a business-to-business environment. And I think I would think alone in the last year, but certainly with the pandemic, I think it became a growing topic that from an institution perspective, the European Union, World Economic Forum, or if it comes from a corporate perspective, this whole question of what is the purpose, what is the beyond profit thought and stimulation of our activity. I think it has never been more widely discussed and debated and reflected than actually in current days.
Yeah, that's interesting because, well, it's interesting that you say the purpose comes afterwards. I strongly believe if you don't have a perfect purpose, you can't make any money. Companies that don't have a purpose are boring companies and probably boring brands in the consumer world. If you don't have a purpose, why are you there? You know. But now you're working on your master thesis, covering exactly this question and dealing with the various dilemma that ethical or decision making entails in management. Can you tell us a bit about your master thesis, about the approach, the scientific concept that's behind it?
Yeah, probably what I found the most fascinating part of that master course is actually the psychological element of it. And I mean, there's oftentimes, as you just said, we don't buy what brands do, we buy why they do it, the whole emotional part of it. And what we also studied a lot is let's say, our classical model is built on what's called the Homo economicus, a very rational actor who has actually the ability to take rational decisions. But if you're in a brand marketing space, and you learn a lot about the emotional factor, and if you're in a space of psychology, you learn a lot about unconscious bias, about almost the inability to take rational decisions. And I think this is not, for me, interesting, not only from an emotional perspective, but also from an ethical perspective, because there's also something like almost a intrinsic, instinctive moral behavior we all carry inside of ourselves.
Okay, so if we think about talking to an economist like me, of course, I strongly believe in the Homo economicus, at least in the long run. But in the short run, absolutely. And don't you agree? There's a lot of psychology behind it. But if a brand doesn't deliver its purpose, well, then you can sugarcoat it with advertisement and flashy billboards. But at the end of the day, people will still not buy it. I mean, people are not stupid. And what I always dislike about this discussion about the Homo economicus is that we often pretend that people are not that intelligent and subject to manipulation. I don't believe people are, at least not in the long run. In the short run, maybe. And that good branding is exactly the opposite of manipulation. Don't you agree?
I actually totally agree. I think if there's one word which for me is paramount, it's the word trust. I think a brand more than a business, on the long run, and I think you touched on it, on the long run, you only have sustainable success if you create trust. And maybe a little bit back into your world and your maybe terminologies, mistrust. And I think we can all close our eyes and try to feel what it is like when you have no trust. In economic terms, that just means transactional cost. And
Absolutely.
transactional cost is what no economist likes. It's also what no consumer likes, and also definitely not what any brand marketer likes.
Absolutely. When we talk about this, we use this word now a couple of times, sustainability or sustainable business model. Do you have some form of definition we can settle on that is dealing with sustainability?
Yeah, you're asking me now about the definition of
Your,
sustainability or
your,
sustainable
yeah,
business model, and I appreciate it because that was actually a question I was also digesting and getting my head around. Because when I heard this terminology of sustainable business model or sustainable business model innovation, I was like, okay, has there ever been a non-sustainable innovation intention from anyone? Um, it would make any sense to me, right? um, but going a little bit deeper, at least from a literature and from an academic point of view, and I think I can certainly support that. The difference, let's say, between a classical business model and a sustainable business model is that you just redefine or expand the definition of value. A classical model would see value strongly driven by financial value generation, and here obviously also long-term sustainable financial value health. While a sustainable business model from the first place starts actually in mind, it's my mission, it's my purpose, not only to solve the profit part of the equation, also the social and the environmental or the planet part. And maybe just to add one sentence, that also from a whole, let's say, conceptualist perspective, you go beyond consumer is king because you look really at a more wider perspective of different stakeholders. And you essentially try to aim, and it's an inspiration, obviously, to service and do good for all the people and all the stakeholders you're actually interacting with. And that makes quite a difference to, let's say, the traditional business model.
I see. And when we spoke beforehand, what you discussed, you came up with, let's say, a few burning questions that, in this respect, managers are asking themselves or should be asking themselves. And maybe you talk a bit about that.
First of all those questions I'm asking, I ask myself at some stage.
Well,
And
very
now,
good.
preparing for my master's thesis, I've started a small sample, but I'm aiming actually to take a sabbatical until the mid of this year and to dig a little bit deeper. Because the essential question I'm asking first is, how do managers perceive ethical issues? And to my surprise, many managers, if you ask them how many ethical issues do you solve in a year, they eventually say something between 0 and 10, no matter on what hierarchy level is. That was a real surprise to hear that very often. And I'm also interested to learn how are actually managers trained. Talking about myself, my classical business school education didn't have any business ethic content delivered. That's why I actually started late on that. Then ultimately, obviously, what does that mean to behavior? Do people with an ethical training behave differently? Highly debated, but that's something I'm really interested in. Those are the burning questions, the first ones. And then I would dream of coming up with some sort of a canvas or some sort of a strategy which could actually leverage business ethics also as a let's say an offensive, positive, creative tool to find better solutions.
Okay, so business ethics, and I totally agree. It's not really taught well in many universities, and only a few have actually started to do that. We do this, okay, on a low scale, but at least we tackle it in our university, because I believe that business ethics is always about dilemmas or dilemmata. You can go either north or south, and you can do either this and that, and if you do this you have a problem, if you do that, it's always this catch-22 situation we find ourselves in. I'm surprised that they say it's between 0 and 10. I would have thought it would be much higher, but maybe they don't label it business ethics, but they are dealing with dilemmas all the time. Well, when you're running a company, this is what you do. Shall we talk about these dilemmas a little bit? I think you prepared some of
Yeah,
dilemma
yeah, let's do that.
situations
And
that
if you're up to it, let's maybe do a little bit of a.
companies deal with. And I believe that our wonderful producer Gerd has prepared something for us. Isn't there a video
Let's picture an
ready waiting
out-of-control
for us?
trolley. In this case, we'll use a train hurtling towards four men who are stuck on the track. Steve is on board
Hey,
the
that's a
train
train.
and notices that the
Okay,
conductor
I
is
don't know. I'm not
incapacitated.
getting the sound, but
He
maybe I
doesn't know how
could
to hit the
explain
brakes,
the little
but
video. And
he
it's
does
it's a,
notice
it's a
lever
super
that would switch the
classical
train to
dilemma
another upcoming track.
experiment, a thought
If he pulls the
experiment.
Okay.
lever, the train would switch
Imagine
tracks,
you're on a
thereby
train and the
saving the
brake
four
is
people on the
broken,
track
right?
ahead.
But you have the
And here's
chance
the rub.
to
On that
switch
alternate track,
the lever,
there's
and
one
you're running
guy
on a
who's
track, and
similarly
there's
stuck,
one
who would
person
face
ahead of
certain
you.
doom if Steve decides
And
to spare the
if you
four
don't
others.
switch,
The
you're
question then
basically
is,
gonna
what should Steve
kill
do,
that one person,
morally
right?
speaking?
And you have a chance to move on a second track, and there's four people actually on the track. So you're in this dilemma between, is it one or four? What you gonna do? And I think now we're getting in a fascinating part of ethics or almost philosophical question. There is a default, and we talked a little bit earlier about our biases and our almost standard defaults, how, especially in economic environments, we take decisions. And there is a classical, what would you do?
Oh my God. And I can't stop
I
the
put
train,
you
right? It's
on the
I
spot.
can either say goes left or right. There is no third option. There's no get out of jail card here, right?
There isn't.
And 4 versus 1. So, to be honest, if you want to hear my true answer, I would probably flip a coin. I would say by chance.
By
Because
chance.
both ethical decisions are wrong. Whatever I do, I mean, at least for either four guys or one guy. So I would probably flip a coin and let fate decide. Not the right answer. I
Now,
mean,
let me be very hard with you. Let's eliminate that chance. I want I want you to take a decision. That's what we expect from good managers. Good managers take decisions, right? Sorry to be sarcastic.
Okay. I don't do anything and run over the other one person because I think one is less than four.
Perfect. Okay, and I think you're very much in the sweet spot of what most of us would naturally do. But let me and just to show a bit the beauty of, let's say, behavioral ethics or business ethics, there is different ways to look at it. And let me quickly go into two alternative options, and that to some of those things, those, let's say, business decisions we're actually taking almost on a daily basis. You could think what you just decided, basically, I think in philosophy is called a consequential approach or a utilitarian approach. So you basically try to generate what you believe is the best and biggest outcome based on your decision, right? And that's what typically economists, also engineers do that a lot. They think very linear, very mathematical about the topic. We could stay on that slide. But there's also at least two other options to think and to reflect and decide about it. The second would be almost a categorical principle. You would just say, okay, as a principle, killing is just no option. I'm not going to sacrifice one person for that's just out of scope, right? That's another way of looking at it. And a third way of looking at it, and I think this is for me a strong relation to the conversation we had before about the purpose of business, is less talking about the act and not about the outcomes. It's much more about the motives. It makes a huge difference if you kill that person because you want to steal the wallet, or if you kill that person like you just did because you want to save four bodies and four lives. And what I find fascinating about those thought experiments, and if translate that into, let's say, a creative sustainability innovation process, that's the space I would in the first place, try to explore, to really think those different perspectives through before I go too fast and too linear into something which seems to be very, let's say, economically only the best solution. So to me, that is just a great example how you can kind of open the mind space by approaching possible new solutions.
Okay, so my solution, flipping a coin, is not an option because you said, yeah, you just turn this into an act of God, and that's boring from a management perspective, and I agree. And also, you say, okay, should we really focus on the outcome, or shouldn't we focus? Shouldn't we more or less focus to a higher degree focus on the motive? But however, what does these kind of dilemmata, what does this mean for today's business? How can you use this thought experiment to draw conclusions for your business, for your sustainable business that you're trying to create? I'm asking you as a manager, I'm running a company. Now you show this to me, I'm overwhelmed, I'm flabbergasted, I feel like, oh my God, I need to readjust the way I'm thinking. Help me. What is your, where's the beef?
For me, the beef sits in, again, we talked also about this term before, is strongly related to trust. In business, we oftentimes use the term walk the talk, right? And let's go back to the purpose declarations many companies do these days, when they put, so to say, the motives at the first place. And but eventually, let's say, if there is some sort of an asymmetry, and that creates mistrust. Let's say if you talk, it's all about my purpose, my motives, but then you act, it's all about outcome. That is creating some sort of emotional irritation, and ultimately, again, is creating some level of mistrust and ultimately creating transactional costs. So I'm always coming back to the same logic. So I think the solution, or let's say a solution or a step into a better solution, is first the level of awareness and education. If you're familiar with that, if you realize that in that moment I'm actually taking a more utilitarian approach, and a second later I'm actually only talking about the purpose, I think if you create consciousness, I think you ultimately have the chance to create more trust and get more buy-in and more collaboration.
Okay. However, do companies that act ethically and have a strong purpose, do they make more money or less? Do you have to sacrifice some profits for your, good heart?
So my simple answer is I'm a student. I'm still learning and I'm investigating on that question.
That's like my flipping the coin. No, that's not an option.
And I'm far away from being arrogant to say I know. But certainly there's my mind, but there's also my heart, and I can tell you what I hope that's going to happen. And I think on the long run, and again, I think, or I feel, I should rather say, on the long run, I'm convinced that business will only be successful, still successful, if it's not only about the profit. I actually think what we just talked before, the whole question of resetting business, resetting corporations, is also still about competitive advantage. So if you are better than your competitors in creating trust, in creating long-term vision and perspective, I think you have an advantage to survive.
I would probably even go further. If we probably want to differentiate between short-term quarterly results, profits, and long-run growth perspective and sustainability, which again, in the end of the day, companies are there to maximize profits. That's my strong belief. However, I believe that the trade-off isn't there. I did a lot of these projects with companies in complex environments, and there was always, they say, yes, but if we if we put ethics first, if we think of maybe stop bribing everybody left, right, and center, well, then we will lose a lot of money, and our shareholders will be extremely unhappy. And if we put ethics and trust first, yeah, that might be interesting for the next generation, but I am incentivized by quarterly or annual results, so this is why I am in a dilemma. And it was really difficult to explain to let's say, help them get an understanding that yes, you may sacrifice one or two quarterly results, but in the end of the day, it's maybe your only chance to have a sustainable business going, and not one that you will drive into chapter 11 if you continue what you're doing.
Do agree. Do agree. That was not a question, right? It was a statement.
Yeah, that was my statement.
Mhm.
Am I wrong?
No, I actually don't think you're wrong at all. What I observe at the moment, following, for example, some of those business roundtable or World Economic Forum discussions, I think it comes from, and I think that goes back to the multi-stakeholder approach. It comes from different directions. If you're seeing the Green Deal, getting access to funding only under certain conditions, or there is huge discussions from a corporate governance perspective of having almost a sustainability chair in the future on boards, or to step away from quarterly reporting. There is companies actually who have the capability, who actually refuse on, I think Porsche had that also many, many years ago already. So that's not a new discussion, right? Because they see it creates some sort of a rigid frame, which is almost counterproductive of creating some long-term sustainable value. So as I said, I see this coming from many, many different angles, from institutional angle, also from the whole ESG capital, impact capital investment market. If I see a statement from the CEO of BlackRock asking actually about purpose and seeing that almost like a driving force to drive profit, thoughts to which I'm 100% in the same wavelengths, but I find it really remarkable that those discussions, let's say, also come from that angle. And as I said, I think it's not a one-dimensional solution, and it's also not a one-dimensional approach.
Yeah, but it's a fascinating topic, and still, I strongly believe if you want to make money as a company, as an entrepreneur, you have to do two things. You have to have a purpose, and you have to be willing to take risks. I have to sometimes go against the mainstream, and this is your only chance to have a sustainable business going. And the area you're covering is, I think, one of the pillars of success. Having a purpose, a meaning, an ethical, let's say, framework or playing field or compass, well, however you label it, that helps you to steer through these complex and weird times we're currently in. And we haven't even had time to cover the pandemic, because that's a similar story. Your ethical dilemma: who should get the treatment and the vaccination first, right? So this is one thing. But now, this was an amazing discussion. Thank you so much. But as always, there's a because now we give you 60 seconds uninterrupted time where you can say whatever you always wanted to say live on the internet. There will be no interruption from my part. There will be no censorship of Gerhard, our producer. It will be just you. So please fire away.
I was not prepared for that, but
that was the trick.
you triggered me with the last sentence you said about mainstream. I never wanted to be mainstream in music or in movies. I always admire when people have a little bit of off-record, a kind of a B-side taste, right? And okay. I feel that business ethics in this moment of time, as much as I'm convinced is fundamentally important, I still think is far away from being mainstream. So in this regard, one thing I want to bring across in my 60-second encouragement: we need some non-mainstream people to make it happen. And you could actually join me. I'm going to post like an open source survey in the next couple of months, which will help generate huge data about my burning questions. And I would appreciate if we could maybe connect over the LinkedIn, and we stay connected, and we can engage on the conversation going further. Because as much as I come from a very branded emotional sports space, I'm also interested to learn how other industries approach this topic. So I'm not seeing the watch now on where I am with my seconds, but yeah, so connect with me. Let's stay engaged. Let's stay mainstream, not mainstream, and let's work on that, new purpose and new mission.
Wow, thank you so much, Thorsten. So, first of all, thank you for your comment on your work.
It was a pleasure. It was a pleasure. I loved it.
people, listeners, viewers, please, scientific progress can only be accomplished if people we fill out those questionnaires. Otherwise, there won't be a good empirical study possible. So please help Torsten whenever you find this in your LinkedIn inbox. Please fill it out. Thank you so much for talking about this amazing topic, and I guess this is something that will raise a lot of comments and concerns and statements, and therefore, just like last week, we invite all of you to join us in our Clubhouse room. You see the room details, hashtag UBE Academy, displayed above our heads. Torsten, thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure. Thank you, Oliver.
Slip into something more comfy, and then I will join you in our Clubhouse in due course. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, guys. This was the UBE Academy episode 34 today on business ethics. Stay tuned and see you next week when we talk about digital, COVID, business, all of these amazing subjects and topics as well. And now it's time to go over to the Clubhouse. Bye-bye.